In 1757, a French mathematician named Alexis Clairaut rented 2 computers. But wait a minute, Harry, they had computers in the 18th century? Well, not exactly. Not machines. People. Computer was a job title. Somebody whose entire role was to divide up hard calculations and grind through them day and night for months. Clairaut needed them because he was trying to do something nobody had done before. Predict exactly when Halley's Comet would return. The maths was brutal. Too much for one person. So he split the work across 3 brilliant minds. Himself, a prominent astronomer, and a distinguished mathematician, each handling a different piece of the problem in parallel. And when the comet appeared in 1759, their prediction was just off by 32 days, later refined to 19. From a calculation done entirely by hand. Now, the word computer has changed a lot since 1757, but the job description has not. You take a problem too complex for any single mind, you split it across specialists, then you run the work in parallel, refine for accuracy. 300 years later, and Perplexity has reminded us of this in their own marketing copy for their new AI product that they are calling Computer. But have they truly reinvented what we mean by a computer in the AI age? One of the most underrated aspects of the OpenClaw craze of the last few weeks was the way it moved the conversation forward. Perplexity Computer is, I think, closer to a digital employee than any of the competitor tools we've seen recently. Manus AI agents, Notion AI custom agents, and we're going to come on to talk about those a little bit more later, or Claude Cowork. Perplexity Computer even troubleshoots its own failures, all without asking you a single follow-up question. So here's the thing about AI in 2026 that I think most people haven't fully grasped yet. We've moved from prompting, then to tools, then to agents, and now I think to the next big thing, orchestrators, or indeed computers. Claude is extraordinary at reasoning tasks and breaking down complex tasks. Gemini is arguably the best deep researcher on the planet. And Grok is lightning fast for quick factual lookups, and of course it is plugged into the zeitgeist through its connection to X. And then you've got the dedicated models for image generation, video production, and so on. The problem is no single model is good at everything, and until now, using multiple models meant you, the human, had to be the project manager. You'd ask Claude to reason through a plan, and then paste that plan into Gemini for deep research, then take those results to GPT for synthesis, then manually compile everything into a deliverable. Now, of course, you could set up an NAN workflow or vibe coded yourself a bunch of APIs together. Rules-based systems do indeed have a lot of strong use cases, but Perplexity's entire thesis is what if the AI was the project manager? At the core of this system is Claude Opus 4.6, acting as the orchestrator. When you give it a goal, not just a prompt, a goal, it doesn't just start generating a text, it breaks that goal down into a task graph. It figures out which subtasks depend on each other, which ones can run in parallel, and then it dispatches each task to the model that's best suited for it. It's less like asking a chatbot a question, and it's more like briefing a very competent project lead who happens to have instant access to the best specialists in every field. Opus 4.6 really is a game changer. Now, orchestration sounds nice in theory, but the thing that actually makes this fast is something called PARL, Parallel Agent Reinforcement Learning. This is a phrase that originates from the Kimi K2.5 technical report. Traditional AI workflows are serial. Task A finishes, then task B starts. PARL lets the orchestrator fire off dozens of agents simultaneously. So while Gemini is deep diving SEC filings, Grok is building CEO names, and GPT is doing broad sentiment analysis, all at the same time. So here's where I think things get very interesting. When one of those agents hits a wall, let's say a website blocks it or an API key is missing, the orchestrator doesn't just fail, it spawns a troubleshooting subagent, and that subagent is looking for alternative data sources. In some cases, actually writing and executing code to build a workaround on the fly without stopping to ask you. Now, Opus 4.6 is a master at this. We've seen it take the lead. And when I gave it an API key or I set up an MCP call, it goes off and spins up a Python tool rather than using MCP if it thinks that might be more efficient. But, and this is the big but, that kind of autonomy is exactly what makes security people nervous. So here is the concern. If you're giving an AI agent the ability to browse the web, execute execute code, write files, and make decisions without your input, what is actually stopping it from doing something catastrophic? And that was our biggest concern about OpenClaw. And that's why we suggested setting it up on one of our VPSs, and why so many devs raided the Apple Store for a Mac Mini, literally giving an agent a brand new separate computer. So this is actually the most important architectural decision that Perplexity has made. So let's break this down then. There are two schools of thought in the autonomous agent world right now, and what we mean by that is these agents that are running 24/7 for you in the back end. School one is that you let the agent run on your local machine with access to your local files and your network. School 2 is you put everything in an isolated cloud sandbox. Perplexity went with School 2. In fact, they doubled down on it. Every task runs in a walled-off container with its own browser, its own terminal, its own file systems. And if an agent makes a logic error or stumbles into a malicious website, the failure stays in that box. So your machine or your network and your data, it's all untouched. Now, Perplexity is literally renting you out a computer, all for $200 a month. And that's why it could be a far better alternative to OpenClaw, especially as their enterprise product is promising SOC 2 compliance, access controls, and compliance with GDPR and HIPAA. So it is then a marked improvement. Although we would of course add that even on the enterprise plan, you still don't get the granular control over location of the data center your data is stored, or the kind of architecture you are using, and you're still relying on closed-sourced APIs. These are all problems, of course, something that G-Core solves. And that brings us neatly onto the cost. Perplexity computer runs on a credit system. The max tier is $200 a month, and if you want those enterprise features we've talked about, it's $325. And for that, you get 10,000 credits a month. Through launch period, they're pushing that to 30,000. So then one of the biggest problems for this system is token burn, because this system, remember, is running 19 models simultaneously, and a badly defined prompt can eat through credits fast. You could potentially burn through thousands of dollars in a month, maybe even more. Users on OpenClaw had this exact same issue, which is why they use OAuth to use their Claude Max subscription, until of course Anthropic reminded everybody that this was a breach of their terms of service and reminded them to go back to using the API. So if you're deploying this to a team, you need spending caps at the project and user level, or someone's going to have a very expensive afternoon. Secondly, and I think this is the one that should be keeping you up at night, quiet failures. Autonomous agents can produce a deliverable that looks impeccable, beautifully formatted, professionally structured, and fully cited. But remember, we haven't left hallucinations behind us, even in 2026. They are still a feature, not a bug. So maybe your agent pulled from a source that's 2 years out of date. The spreadsheet passes the eye test, but it doesn't pass the truth test. So the takeaway here is not don't use it, but it's your job is changing. Your employees are not going to be the people that build the spreadsheet, and they're not going to be the manager of complex AI systems anymore, the engineer. Your team are going to become the people that audit it, and that's genuinely a different skill set. It's a shift of the kind I anticipated we would see when OpenClaw dropped, and they are not the only company to move in the same direction. Notion AI also dropped custom agents, which can also do scheduled tasks for you with tools, and again, they use a per-use credit system. It doesn't make you better at doing the grunt work, it actually makes the grunt work disappear. And I think the organizations that win from here aren't the ones firing everybody. They're the ones that figure out the new job, the one where your value isn't assembling information, it's in judging it. So if you're evaluating autonomous AI tools for your team, I'd start by asking not which model is the best or what tool is the best, but what do you actually need to get done, and how can AI help you take it away? Furthermore, does your team have the skill set to be auditing what the AI actually produces, the specialist knowledge? So have you used Perplexity Computer or any of the new autonomous tools, and how are you finding them? Are you an enterprise leader looking to implement AI in your business, or are you an employee at a business thinking about these tools and how you can use them in your day-to-day work? Let me know in the comments. I try to read all of them, and it's good to get some feedback about what is working in these videos, and I will see you next week in the next video.